xenophobic nationalism, don't you think that's better for Americans in general?
Like xenophobic nationalism is better?
We should have a coherent culture. Everyone should be a part of the same culture. We should have assimilation.
Which, do you get to choose what the culture is?
We already have a dominant culture.
What is
based
the dominant
on European
culture?
and Christian values and identity. That is the dominant culture.
White Christian,
it's rooted in European identity.
White, so your argument is that
has been the dominant culture.
Just to be clear.
And we're not letting people assimilate to that. We're saying you should keep your culture, and this is why our culture is so divided.
Your argument is that Trump is good for those who want a dominant white European culture.
I mean, that is what America is. It's rooted in European identity and Christian values. That's what it has been. Would you really disagree with that? What is it then, if that's not the identity of America?
Well, I think the identity of America...
For the majority of time, America's been a country. You don't think that's been the identity?
Well, actually, no. I think actually the identity of America has been, you know, for better or for worse, a melting pot in that regard.
Yeah, maybe since like the 1960s. Even then, even we had this idea of a melting pot literally means assimilation too. It means melting. It means you're assimilating to the dominant culture. Is that not what melting means?
No, it doesn't
and
mean
now instead we're saying there's something wrong with xenophobia. Dominant
culture. No. I mean, look, I got to be honest with you. Like, you and I have a fundamental disagreement. We will never see eye to eye on this. It's a choice. And people, I think what you're expressing, though, is really what the Trump movement at its heart is about. And I think that's problematic.
I disagree. I don't think Trump's anywhere close to being a Christian nationalist. That's ridiculous. Trump's basically a Democrat from 15 years ago when it comes to social issues.
So you don't think that he's conservative enough for you?
Oh, definitely. Nowhere close. No.
He's not xenophobic enough for you?
No, he's trying to import a bunch of H-1Bs. Are you kidding?
Right. Oh, so you want to get them out too? Yeah. No, I mean, I think you're making my argument for me.
All right. Well,
yeah, I don't think so, Sam. Okay. All right, everybody. That video went absolutely viral last week. Sarah Stock is the woman featured there. She's a journalist and contributor to Slightly Offensive and Vigilant News. She recently appeared on that episode of Surrounded, where she debated Sam Seder on abortion and Christian nationalism, and of course, utterly destroyed him. And that video sort of took on a life of its own, and seems to have been an inflection point in the conversation on the right wing. You can follow Sarah on X at Sarah C. Stock, on Instagram at sarah.stock.politics, and the website is slightlyoffensive.com. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me, Harrison. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And, you know, rarely have I seen a single clip, especially from somebody that I hadn't seen before. I didn't know who you were before this clip. I'm glad I do now. It's very rare that you see a clip like that, a debate that's only a few minutes long, that so drastically alters the conversation across the entire spectrum. I mean, what has been your experience following the release of that clip and the huge popularity of it?
Well, I've gotten a lot of pushback from the left for this. Thankfully, though, I haven't really received much pushback from the right. I was worried, I knew I was pushing the line a little bit there because I was starting a conversation that we're not really talking about right now. But thankfully, it seems like the conservative movement somehow backed me completely in this. The only pushback I really received from my side of the aisle was from another girl who was on the Jubilee episode who was really upset that I used the term xenophobic.
Well, we could get into that, but no, I think it's the fact that there were so many positive responses to you is sort of what I'm referencing when I'm saying it changed the conversation, because there were so many people that responded positively to your clip, despite for years, sort of rejecting everything that you say in that clip. Mm-hmm. Like, it's very weird. Matt Walsh comes to mind, and people were posting, clips of him saying more or less the exact opposite. It's a horrible thing to say America is European, America is a melting pot. He used to make all the same arguments Sam Seder was making in that, but here he was supporting you and saying actually he's exactly right. I mean, what do you think accounts for that shift in the conversation? I think it's a welcome one. I think it's a good thing. I think what you said is just the obvious truth that it's absurd to argue against. It's just history and fact. And so anybody not saying this was silent out of fear. Is the fear gone? Like, why do you think people like Matt Walsh and others are coming around to this view despite being so resistant to it for so long?
Well, I think Con Inc. kind of realizes that things are moving further to the right now, especially within young people, within Gen Z. This is like the most right wing conservative generation that we've had for a long time. And so I just think they realize that the conversation's changing and they're not going to be relevant for much longer unless they go along with it.
So you think it's just a survival mechanism? Basically, they see which way the wind is blowing and they don't want to get run over.
Yeah, I mean, I do think, I'm not saying that I think that Michael Knowles or Matt Walsh don't agree with what I said. I just think they weren't willing to say it before, but now things have shifted and they feel like they can say it. And they might also be wanting to push that line as well. And also realize that that's what's going to keep them relevant. So it's kind of a double edged sword.
Yeah, and you know, my interpretation of it was like everybody knows that this is true. Like when you say America is a European culture, it was founded by Europeans, and like I'm all that is just, it's obviously true. Everybody who knows anything about history, like it's absurdly obvious. So anybody denying that was being dishonest, basically. And it's, you know, they want to paint you as extreme for saying what is obviously true. And it seems like all these people sort of accepted this, I don't even know how to put it, this thing that's always attached to it, where it's like, if you recognize reality, if you say America is European, that must mean that you hate all non-Europeans and you want all of them to die, and you want this to be a Christian nationalist tyranny where all other religions are suppressed. Like they add on all this stuff, but it's like, no, America's European, and there's nothing wrong with stating that fact. And it seems like it was just fear that was stopping them from doing that, fear of being associated with like racist or hateful ideas. So, I mean, what do you think the validity of that is? Like, do you think they're just not scared anymore? The conversation has changed, that they can just say what they believe, or is it purely cynical and they just, you know, want to stay ahead of the curve?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it's a mix of both, but no, I totally agree with you. It's crazy how much people added on to what I said in that clip.
Right.
And, you know, I'm getting all these messages that are like, oh, so you want to genocide all non-white people
Right.
then? And it's like, no, when did I ever say that? Right. I'm just saying we need to recognize the identity that our nation has, recognize, you know, who built this country. It was Europeans. There's majority Europeans who built the country. We formed the identity. It is a white country. We're still a majority white country. We always have been. We've always had this Christian identity. We're culturally Christian, even if we're moving closer toward secularism right now, and less people are Christian. We're still a culturally Christian country. We're not an Islamic country. We're not a Hindu country. Like that's obviously what our identity is. It's just so clear to me.
Yeah, and you know, even if we aren't explicitly Christian, the foundation of everything, you know, all of our laws and everything, it's all, the foundation is all Christian. So they might justify it through sort of materialism, humanitarianism. They might not call it Christian, but still the basis is Christianity, and that's still what our laws are based on. And again, it's like, what is the problem with admitting that? Why are they so scared to admit that? And it reminds me of things like, if you talk about disparities in IQ between races, it's like, this is just scientific fact. You can read into it whatever you want, but if you refuse to acknowledge reality, you're going to make everything worse. Like, how are you going to deal with, you know, inequalities between races if you don't look at what, you know, those races are like and what their characteristics are? So again, on that, it's like, if you say, or crime rates or whatever, if you say like, well, the black race has, you know, a higher crime rate on average than the white race. I mean, that's just statistics. That's just factual. That's all you say. And then people go, oh, okay, so you think black people are inherently criminal and therefore need to be killed. And it's like, well, I didn't say that. What the hell are you talking about? How do we talk about facts without people just tacking on all of this other crap that we don't agree with? Like, you know, we'll never solve a problem if we can't just talk about reality. And that seems to me like what we're finally doing is just talking about reality.
Yeah, exactly. And that was my goal. When I went on that show, I knew that what I was going to say was going to be more controversial than anything else that came out of the mouths of the other conservatives there. But I also just knew it was a conversation that needed to be started. I mean, if we can't talk about what our identity is as a nation, like where are we supposed to go from there? Like we have to actually know who we are. And yeah, like I knew it was controversial basically, but it just needed to happen, I think.
It did. And again, that's what's so shocking about this is so many people came to your defense and agreed with you that I never would have expected, and it's a great thing, and I think it's a long overdue thing. And I just always think of it like, you know, when I hear a black person or a Hispanic person or an Asian person, like when they're proud of themselves or they're talking about how great their country is, I'm not insulted. So why should you be insulted if I'm talking about how great my history is or my people are or the accomplishments of my ancestors? Like, why are you not able to be happy for me in the same way I'm happy for you? And it seems like there's a self-imposed, like, I don't know, a diminishment of European accomplishments that you can just reject, and you can just treat everybody exactly the same. And that seems very easy to me. But we've got these labels, like you pointed out, like xenophobia. Xenophobia, which sounds very scary. It sounds like an alien or something. You don't want to be attacked by a xenophobe, right? What does it mean to you? And you know, why were you saying it as if it was a positive thing?
Well, xenophobia, that word means irrational fear of a stranger, basically. And I think it's just a dumb word, personally, because I don't think it's irrational to be afraid of our country being, you know, look at the invasion that's been happening on our southern border for years. I don't think that's an irrational fear. I think it's perfectly rational. So I just think the term itself is just kind of stupid. It's just another way to silence people. Sam Cedar said that Trump supporters are all xenophobic nationalists. So to me, what that means is Trump supporters are nationalists who want to put America first. So if that's what he thinks it is, I'll call myself that. I don't really care.
And that sort of goes to the heart of your clip, right? It's just saying, oh, I'm a xenophobic nationalist. Like, okay, fine. Why is that wrong? And, you know, it's just taking these labels and just going, yeah, that doesn't work anymore. And it doesn't anymore. And we even see, you know, people, groups are like shifting words that they're using. Like, you don't see anti-Semitism as much anymore. Now you see Jew hate. They've come up with a new phrase for it. It's Jew-hate, because anti-Semitism sort of stopped having the oomph it used to have. Racism, you don't hear a lot of people being called racist anymore as an argument ender, because that's how it used to be. It used to be if you called somebody racist, that person went, oh, no, sorry, no, let me correct my. But like, it doesn't matter anymore. We don't care about these labels anymore. Again, I think it's another amazing and great thing. And, you know, we can just either get rid of these words or just use them like you did to say, yeah, xenophobic nationalism sounds good to me. So I think that's great. Again, where do you think it goes from here? What do you think happens now that they can't, you know, wield these words against us to silence us?
Well, they totally just lose all their power. That's what happens. You know, I think a few years ago, if you said you were a xenophobic nationalist on a show like that, I mean, I don't know what would happen to me, but probably would have been a lot worse than how my life is right now. Nothing's happened. I haven't, you know, been kicked out of school. I haven't lost my job. I haven't lost any friendships. No one really cares because the left has used these words so much that they've just lost all of their meaning.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a mistake that they made because now they don't have any weight to them. And now we could just use them on ourselves and nobody cares. And we're still winning.
Yeah, and it's all a psyop in the first place. And I talk endlessly about, you know, the term racism being manufactured and trying to compare to things like you're a familyist. Why do you engage in familyism? Why do you appreciate your family more than people that aren't your family? And it's like, yeah, that's natural and normal, and that's how it used to be. And it's shocking that they're able to like divorce humanity from actually liking their race. And of course, white people are the only ones that are subject to this. But there's another term that you used at the very beginning, Christian nationalism. And this is another very contentious word now. There's a lot of fear-mongering about Christian nationalism going on. What does that mean to you, and why do you use it to define yourself? You did, right? You said you were a Christian nationalist?
Yeah, to me, that means I think that our laws should reflect biblical morality. And just like we used to have a lot more of our laws that did that too. We used to have laws against abortion, against same-sex marriage, divorce, etc. And I would like to bring those back. I mean, if you are a Christian, why would you not be a Christian nationalist? Why would you not believe that God's way is the best way? And if you truly believe that, you would want that on a societal level too.
Well, and even if you weren't Christian, why wouldn't you want to live in a Christian nationalist country? And I guess the same type of thing kind of happens with as we were talking about, where you say, hey, America is mostly white people, and they go, wow, so you want to kill all the black people. And it's like, what the hell are you talking about? It's the same thing with Christian nationalism, where it's like, well, I'm a nationalist and I'm a Christian and I want to live in a Christian country and I'm a nationalist. So I'm a Christian nationalist. And they go, oh, so you want a theocracy where you're forcing women to wear headdresses. Like, they extrapolate it out. I mean, how do you combat that, or what validity do you think that argument has? And what do you say to people who, act like Christian nationalism means that you want, the Pope to be the president? Like, is that what it means to you, or how do you deal with that argument?
That's not really what it means to me. I think, yeah, a lot of people like to blow it out of proportion and say that if you believe in Christian nationalism, that means you want to murder everyone who's not Christian,
Right.
or force people to convert at gunpoint, like maybe would happen in an Islamic state. But that hasn't happened before. We've had Christian nationalist countries before, and people weren't exactly being murdered for not converting, because that's not what we believe as Christians. It has to be a choice you make out of your own free will.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, there are theocratic countries out there. One of our greatest ally, in fact, Israel, of course, has very stringent, guidelines as to the religiosity of their government, and nobody seems to have a problem with that. But when it's Christians, then it's dangerous and bad and wrong, which is absurd. And I always point to the fact that the German nation state, since World War II, the number one party that has ruled Germany is the the Christian Democrats, right? It's like, okay, have they been a theocracy, or have they been actually extremely secular? It's not even an accurate label for them, but it's like this idea of, well, they're Democrats and they're Christian. Well, I'm a nationalist and I'm Christian. What's the problem? We should have a Christian nationalist party. Do you think that is in the cards in the future? Do you think there's going to be a explicitly Christian nationalist party moving forward?
I mean, I hope so. I don't know. Our two-party system is pretty locked in here in America, so it definitely take a lot of change for that to happen. But I don't know. I have hope for the future. I would just like to focus right now on just moving the establishment, the conservative establishment, further to the right. And I think that would help us achieve some of our goals. So I would more work on just trying to move the Republican Party to be more of a Christian nationalist party.
Yeah, I think so too. And again, the race thing is such a funny transition that's going on. It was either right before or right after your video came out. I posted something that might have been a little ambitious, but I was just thinking about it, and I was like, probably by 2028, there's going to be candidates running in American elections explicitly pro-white. Like, they're like, will benefit white people. White people are under attack, and I'm not going to let that happen. I think we're like right around the corner from that. I think the response to your video shows that people are sick of white people being the only race that's treated differently and worse than all the others. And I think, like, once people realize that, like, this isn't a career ender, and some politician's going to say that they're in favor of white people, and that clip's going to go viral, and everybody's going to support that. So then all the other politicians are going to want to, jump on that bandwagon. I don't think it's going to be very long before we have politicians in America that are explicitly pro-white. Do you think that's a possibility, or am I way too ambitious here?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's a possibility. It's hard to know, because I know I'm in a little bit of an echo chamber myself. And it's like, okay, how many people out in the real world who are involved in politics would just be so appalled to hear something like that? So I'm not really sure if, that's definitely not where we're at right now, but maybe you're right. Maybe it could happen in a few years.
But that's so, like, why are they appalled? I get why they're appalled by it, but you got to wonder, like, what is so appalling about white people saying, white people matter, if you don't feel that about any other race? Like, how do, it's that mental barrier that we have to break through. How do we do that? How do we make that argument to people who are, horrified and outraged that white people would, not want to be destroyed? How do you deal with those people? How do you I don't know, contend with that resistance of even recognizing white people as having interest or being a race, worthy of continuing existence? How do you deal with that argument?
Yeah, well, it is crazy, because white people are basically held collectively responsible for anything bad that any white person has done ever. That's why, we go to school, we're growing up, and all we learn about is slavery and the Holocaust, and we're supposed to feel all this white guilt about all these things that we obviously took no part in, and the majority of white people took no part in at all. And then we're not allowed to take any responsibility for all the amazing things that white people have done, like build all of Western civilization,
Right.
like build the country that we're living in right now that everyone wants to come to, like invent basically half the things we use on a daily basis, if not more. And we're not allowed to take any responsibility for that. And then I think part of that is that we're not even allowed to feel like white people are a collective group. Like that's like hateful or something to think that, like, to say like, oh, like my fellow white people or something, like that's hateful. It doesn't really make any sense. It's like this group status is only able to be attributed to us by other people, but we're not allowed to kind of claim it for ourselves. So I think that's really the way to shift the conversation, to say, look, like we're already viewed as a group by everyone else, even if you don't realize it. So why not just view yourself as part of that group too?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, because without that just very moderate stance of just like, hey, we don't deserve this. Like, then you have the anti-white people that are very explicitly, they hate white people, they demonize white people for everything. And then the only pushback to that you get is from like the actual white supremacists that are like, no, I am a white supremacist and we should kill all the other ones, T and D, right? And it's like, okay, there has to be a middle ground, and the middle ground is obvious. It's just white people are not evil. They're the same as any other race, and they deserve the same protections that all the other races have. And like, I'm glad that conversation is being had now, because it's the extremes that don't get us anywhere. And just, you know, as a note on this, Shakespeare faces cancel culture because he was white, right? They're like destroying Shakespeare's birthplace. His birthplace trust is destroying the Stratford upon Avon. They're decolonizing it to create a more inclusive museum experience, right? So it's like, it's not about, you know, undoing historical wrongs. It's about erasing white people and their accomplishments, which is horrifying. And if this happens continually for 50 years into the future, kids are going to be born and have no idea that white people ever did anything, because all their movies will be filled with black people playing the historical white people. It's genocide in my personal opinion, but I just thought it was just absolutely incredible, not just your video, but the response to it and the changing of this conversation to one where white people aren't either demonized or held as supreme, but are just treated like every other race. I think that is the development that has needed to happen here in America and in the Western world. Sarah C. Stock on X, sarah.stock.politics on Instagram, and the website slightlyoffensive.com. Sarah, thank you so much for being with us, and congratulations on the incredible victory against the subversive Sam Cedar.
Of course. Well, thank you so much for having me on.
My pleasure. Keep up the great work, and we'll have to have you on again soon, folks. Stay with us. We'll be joined by Whit Lyman live from the White House. On the other side, it's the American Journal. Share these links, folks.
While other networks lie to you about what's happening now, InfoWars tells you the truth about what's happening next. Infowars.com/show.
Go to the AlexJonesStore.com. Get the very best supplements, the highest quality, like Ultimate Turmeric, Ultimate CMOS, and so many other game-changing formulas that you will love and that will blow you away. Then the widest selection of Patriot t-shirts and hoodies and sweaters and ball caps, and we're just adding more and more. It is the biggest selection, over 400 different designs. We are winning, ladies and gentlemen, but InfoWars is recognized as the tip of the spear in the fight against the globalist. Elon's kicking their ass, Trump's kicking their ass, because you've supported them. But please don't forget about InfoWars, because in this fight, Elon and Trump, what they're doing is way larger and just incredible and amazing. But you look then below that, and we are the most effective. We are now reaching the most people of any of the shows out there. And not just the Patriot broadcast. We're reaching over 100 million people a day conservatively, and that's because you stood with us and you supported us. But these new viewers, these new listeners, they're not going to the AlexJonesStore.com, and they're not getting product. It is the hardcore viewers and listeners like you, the patriots that helped launch this whole thing, that are keeping us on the air. You're not the Johnny-come-latelys. You're the people that understand how important it is to support independent, patriot, pro-human, anti-globalist media that are enemies of humanity. So get great products. At the same time, keep us on air at thealexjonesstore.com. I want to thank you all for your past support, and I want to encourage you now to take action. Become a VIP. It's $30 a month. Cancel anytime. Get $40 to spend in the store each month. Special deals, special sales, special offers. Become a VIP if you're going to buy anything, because you make money on your first purchase when you do it. Again, thank you so much. Check out thealexjonesstore.com today, and I thank you for keeping us on the air.